talking firearms this morning. At the moment, just one of the gun guys is in studio with us. That is Todd Eccles from Washington Street Pawn. Coming up on, not quite 7 minutes after 9 o'clock, and we're at 45 this morning on Top Story. And we do talk firearms on Friday mornings. And part of this is Todd and part of this is me, but during the week, you collect these too, and I collect them, all sorts of different stories related to what we're talking about. And
Yeah.
over time, I've gotten better at this, building up this pile on my desk. And then lately, I've even been remembering to bring them into the studio.
That's a step forward.
It is a step forward. But there was one that caught my attention this week, and we'll get into this a little bit later. But I got a chance to listen to one of your podcasts this week, and actually part of another one. I've got to tell you, they're very entertaining in the sense that a lot of times people would just do this and they would just talk about serial numbers and model numbers, and they would talk about specific ammunition and the size. But this goes a little bit beyond that. You tell stories, and as I was mentioning off air to you, they're very descriptive and detailed, so the listener can almost feel they're right there in the setting as you're telling the stories.
Yeah, we have a really, really good time doing the podcast. Now, I'm kind of still new to the podcast world. And when I started, I was doing it all on my own, and I enjoyed doing it, but it got real hard to do it by myself. So I brought on a buddy of mine. His name's Dean. He's kind of as the co-host, and we delve into a little bit of meaty topics, and we tell stories. And then we always have, we have a little bit of, what did you do this week, and in the Second Amendment or involving guns. And we talk about that, and we just have a really good, enjoyable time doing it. And doing the podcast, it gives me the, there's no commercials, there's no nothing like that. So it gives me the freedom just to go into these stories and tell stories and really talk about whatever it is we decide we want to talk about that day. And we have a really enjoyable time doing it. If we have time, we do we go out and we do some shooting and stuff before, and we just a great time.
I wanted to point out too, for people who'd like to hear these, they're readily available.
Yeah, you can find them on iTunes, and you can find them on Spotify. So you can, if you're an Apple user and you use iTunes, you're good to go. And if you're an Apple user or you use Android and you like Spotify, you can find them on Spotify. They're free. It's under the Patriot Defense Podcast, and if you find them on there, just go ahead and click subscribe. That way you'll continually get the new episodes. We try to do one a week. Occasionally we have to skip. Sometimes Dean's wife won't let him come over and play. So occasionally we miss one. But go ahead and like it. You can rate it. You can review it. Share it with your friends. I also post them all over my Facebook pages.
We want to mention, for people who'd like to reach our show today, 208-736-0300. And I want to mention, we'll get to our caller in just a moment. But before we do, you had a class Saturday. Contact information for you, because a lot of people, the weather's going to be getting better. You'll have a class coming up in March, I'm sure.
Right. My next class is actually scheduled for March 3rd and is for the enhanced permit class. You can get a hold of me. You can call me. You can text me at area code 620-794-6223. That's area code 620-794-6223. You can call, text me, ask me questions, get you on the list for the class, whatever you want to do. You can find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense, and my phone is still blowing up. I got people calling and scheduling private classes, private instruction classes with me. So if you want to do that, give me a call. We can get something scheduled.
We have a caller with us on the line. And caller, you're up next. It's 9:10, and you're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning, gentlemen. Yesterday in the Army Times, I read the headline that the military is going to a new pistol. It's made by SIG, S-I-G. My question is, what is the advantage of changing or making the transition to a new gun? And what will happen to all the old guns that the military has? Will they be put up for sale, or will they be melted down? Your thoughts, please.
Of course, can I mention, under the previous administration, melting down was usually the
option A.
Yeah.
Yeah. The best person to answer that question would be Forrest. But I would imagine, typically in the past, they've as far as the old ones, they'd get them onto the market, or at least the surplus ones of them, a certain portion of them. I don't know if that's what they're slated to do with these or not. Forrest may or may not know. As far as going to the SIG, SIG's a good gun. I'm not a huge SIG fan myself. It just feels funny in my hand. Nothing against SIG. It's just not for me. But they went with like a modular style system. I think they're just trying to simplify stuff. SIG has a really good record. They did have a few problems that they got ironed out, but I think SIG went up against stuff like Glock and some other manufacturers, and they came out on top. And it's a very popular pistol, a very modular setup as far as magazines and whatnot. A lot of stuff, that meets all the requirements that the military was looking for. I think it's a pretty good choice.
I don't know. Caller, are you still with us? No, I think he's left us. But of course, from World War I until about 1985, the 1911 was the military sidearm.
Right.
And so that lasted for decades. And then the military, because they'd moved from revolvers to the 1911 during World War I, and we got to thank a fellow by the name of Browning just down the highway for that, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And I've been to the museum and looked at all of these, and I'll tell you, they're beautiful to look at. Some of the original. This man, I mean, genius, obviously, when it came to design, and he solved a lot of problems. But the things are so big. The idea was in the mid '80s to find something that would be, if you're going to be moving your military fast, and they've got to react fast, to make some changes. And I think this is just the latest generation of that idea that we've got to keep moving along to stay with the times.
Now here's the question that came to me, and I don't recall. I know that they went to SIG. Did they go to the SIG? Did they go to the 9mm? Is that what did they caliber wise? Do you know if they went to the 9?
I read this story some months ago myself.
Yeah,
but I do not remember.
This happened quite a while ago, and I want to say I think they went. I don't know. I'm not going to say because I don't know for sure. But yeah, I mean, you always have to change up what you're doing, change up what you use, just to kind of keep up with times and keep it more present and in the future. And I think they needed to after a while.
But think about this too. In our military, we've got guys out on the field. They're generally wearing some body armor.
Yeah.
Often our opponents, especially in places like Afghanistan and other parts of the world, they're not. So 9mm would do the job as far as that goes.
Well, yeah, and it will do the job, and it's all about getting when you're using your firearm defensively, it's all about getting more rounds down range, and it's the rounds that hit the target that are going to do the job. You could have a 45 caliber handgun, and nothing is 45. I like shooting them too, but if that round is too big and the recoil is too much and it doesn't hit where it intends to hit, but you could do the same thing with a 9, but it's going to hit its target, that's the one you want to go with.
You had some folks using revolvers this past week at the class, and I saw you had a video or a picture of that online, but they had some beautiful looking revolvers.
Oh yeah, occasionally, yeah. Typically, whenever I have revolvers in the class, I have some really nice looking revolvers. A lot of people bring in 357s and they'll shoot 38s out of them because on the indoor range you're not allowed to use Magnum style calibers. But no, I've fantastic revolvers. Had some really nice 1911s in class too. In fact, the guy that took the best shot in class was shooting, I believe it was with an old Colt 1911, and that guy could shoot. Big old long slide on that gun. It's full size 1911. Fantastic firearm.
So we got big hands.
Yeah, he was really tall too.
If you're about 5'3" and your hands aren't that big, maybe the 1911 isn't for you.
It might not be, but you got to look when you look at 1911s. There's nothing wrong with 1911s. They can be a bit finicky. And in 1911 and a 45, you're looking at a round count of like 6 or 7 rounds. I can go with a full size 9mm and a striker fired pistol, and I can get anywhere from 15 to 16 all the way up to 19 rounds. So I mean, pick your poison.
Now, of course, you have pistols that look like 1911s, but they fire 9mm. So technically, they're not really a 1911, but are they better in that sense?
They might be a little easier to shoot. Now, as far as I don't. It's hard to say because we had. I've seen a 9mm. They had a compact. I believe it was a 9mm compact Kimber come in. So it's a 1911, and that thing was having all kinds of problems. Now the guy did state toward the end of class it only had like 40 or 50 rounds through it. So I don't think it was properly broken in. With 1911s, you need to properly break them in by shooting some rounds. But they can be a little finicky. I don't know. Do we want to get into the 1911 debate today? 1911s are great. I would rather
great museum pieces, in other words, right?
Yeah, well, and Kimber makes some really modern day pieces that are, handguns that are fantastic. They're beautiful and
$1,400.
They do run very, very, very well, most of them. But for self defense, I'm looking for higher round count, and I'm looking for something I can get more target or get more rounds down range, and that for me that's a 9mm.
We have a caller. It's 916. You're up next, and you're on KLIX.
Hey, good morning, Bill. Hey, I got a quick question. I have my concealed, but I go to California a lot, and I know I can't carry a weapon over there. Is carrying a flare gun illegal? I'll let you guys go. Thank you.
Okay, carrying a flare gun. I don't know if it's illegal or not. It depends on if it's classified as a firearm. And I'm as far as in California, you're gonna have to look and see what California decides. What they're classifying a flare gun as. I don't know. I mean, it's better than nothing. I still don't know that I recommend a flare gun because you got a lot of stuff going on in there. If you use it inside of a vehicle, use it outside somewhere. You could start a fire. You could. I don't know. I like to use in California. They don't leave you with a lot of options, but I like to use a tool for what it was intended to be used for. And a flare gun, in my mind, isn't intended for self-defense. I guess unless that's your only option. You may look into what their knife laws are. Maybe you can carry some kind of knife or something like that.
And the flare gun too. You're not going to get off many. You fire, and then if you don't hit the target, you're pretty well done.
Well, and if it's night out time, dark outside, dark room, dark car, whatever, and you use it, you may set something on fire if you're inside the house or inside the car. If it's night, you're going to immediately ruin. You're going to go blind. You're going to ruin your. You're going to get the light. It's going to light up. You're going to go blind for a minute. I don't see that as a viable option personally.
Yeah, and if you have a misfire too, badly burn yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Be up there with Elon Musk and his flamethrower.
Yeah, just see if you can get on the list for that flamethrower. That's what I'd do.
But again, if you go to the AG's website in California, you'll probably have an answer. You're up next. You're on the air on Top Story, and Todd Eccles is joining us. We're talking about firearms. Go ahead.
Yes. I guess in some ways I'm a little puzzled, or maybe what do you classify as self-defense, and when do you need it? You're talking, well, you can have up to 19 rounds in your firearm, and that's great. If I can't shoot something in 2 rounds, I better not be shooting at it. And I've shot basically all my life. Self-defense, if the man can, if he's standing 5 feet away, I'm sure as hell not going to miss him. And if he's 10 feet away, he's probably not really a physical threat to me. I don't know. I feel like a lot of this you're selling fear, but anyway, I use a single shot handgun, and I hit what I shoot at. Thank you.
We've got about 30 seconds. We may have to start and then pick it up on the other side of the break.
Okay, that was a good question. And if a single shot handgun works for you, fantastic. It is a proven fact, though, that your shots in a defensive confrontation, your shots will drop by 80%. Your effective shots, hits, will drop by 80%. That's just what it is under stress. That's what it is with everyone, us, law enforcement, whatever. We always talk about training, practice, practice, practice. You want to be the most efficient and the best shot that you possibly can be. And I hear some music, Bill. Do we need to pick this up afterwards?
We'll pick it up afterward. Okay. We've got more coming up. It's 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. We're at 43. Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense and Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Todd Eccles is in the studio with us from Patriot Defense on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. We're at 45. Bill Colley with you as well. Forrest is still apparently on mission duty. But it improves his Spanish.
Sunning himself with the iguanas.
Yes. But he always does good research on gun laws wherever he goes. You notice that?
Yeah, he does.
So he's got some expertise there. We wanted to point out, of course, that Washington Street Pawn, where Forrest is the proprietor now, Washington Street Pawn is only a few blocks away from here. It's on South Washington Street. And if you go to the Facebook page or even drop in the store, you'll be amazed. It's no one. He talks mainly firearms on the show with us, but computers, Xboxes, and generally you get the best price in town on the Xboxes. I noticed that a couple of weeks ago. He had some comments about that online. He was very much below what everybody else was selling them for.
Oh yeah, and I do want to say that I heard rumor and I saw some pictures that rock chucks are out. It's way early, but there's some rock chucks out now. They'll probably go back down under if we get this cold spell coming in, but they are out. And I would imagine if you need some kind of varmint rifle, some kind of ammo,
yep.
I'd go see Forrest. I'm sure he could hook you up.
You don't want them messing up around your foundations and the like. And I heard them squeaking in the barn back here the other day.
They're just fun to shoot.
Yeah, we had a caller who was saying that he uses a single shot, And he says, I don't need to have a second shot. And if the guy's 10 feet away, I don't think I'm in any serious, there's not a threat.
Right. That's what he said. Now, if I'll restate this. If a single shot handgun works for him for self defense, fantastic. If he's that great of a shot, he's a better shot than me, and like you said, go for it. I will reiterate too that in a defensive situation, your shots fall, your shot accuracy falls by like 80% just because you're under stress and everything like that. So you've got to understand that. So more rounds, the better in my mind. Now, as far as he said, if someone's 10 feet away, they're not a threat, and he can just run away. If you can and you don't have to use your firearm, fantastic. Do that. If I am in a parking lot, if I'm in a store, if I am somewhere and I have my kids with me, am I going to be able to round them up? If a bad person is coming at me at 10 feet away, it is a proven fact. I don't know the exact time. I know it's under 2 seconds. A person with a knife is a viable threat at 21 feet. They can cross cover 21 feet in less than 2 seconds. That's called, you can look it up. That is called the 21-foot rule. Okay, it's well known in law enforcement. 21-foot rule. Check it out. Look it up. It's called the Tueller drill. A threat is a threat. I mean, if a person's coming at you, I want all the rounds I can because, maybe I'm going to hit the person with every shot. That's fantastic if I am. But I'm not always going to hit center mass. I may shoot the person in, I may be shooting for center mass, maybe a little off, may hit him in the shoulder or the arm. He's still coming at me. He's still a threat. I want all the advantages that I can get. Now, we're not trying to breed fear in anyone, but stuff like this can happen, and it pays to be prepared and be ready at any given time.
Every week I read a story somewhere that involves somebody minding their business around their own home.
Right.
Or and I was telling you about being in a parking lot in broad daylight the other day. You just don't, and it doesn't even have to be someone with criminal intent. If you've got some poor individual who has a mental issue, and they just at random they decide they're going to attack you because they are fearful of you because of their mental. These things you just don't know, and that's something that people have to be prepared for.
Well, and then we mentioned my podcast earlier, and I retold these stories on the podcast, and I've told them on the radio show too. I had a situation where I had to draw my firearm. Luckily, I didn't have to pull the trigger, but I was out fishing with my daughter. I took I think she was 5 or 6 at the time, took her out fishing in Kansas, and it's all weird. And we were out fishing. We were coming back to our vehicle, and I ran into a situation that I was unaware of that I actually had to draw my firearm. And I'm glad I have it to this day. I can guarantee you 110% me drawing that firearm, it's saved my life probably.
We have a caller. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Yes, I just have a comment. A single-shot 22 was all I ever used for deer and antelope when I was ranching in Montana many years ago. But I would not use that for my self-defense. That is not what I have present in my home for self-defense. I've actually been in a situation 3 different times where I was faced at gunpoint and had to defend myself. And I'll tell you something else about a knife. Years ago, I actually, in Wild West shows, I had a knife act. And if you think that you can't throw a knife faster than they can shoot, you better wake up because they surely can, and I can prove it.
Yeah, knives are very underrated weapons. If you know how to use a knife properly, and someone can, especially, will throw, but if they can get to you with a knife, they will mess you up beyond belief. And you mentioned hunting. Well, hunting with a single shot 22, and you took deer and antelope and stuff, just like you said, you did that proficiently, and that's fine. But you're not you're stressed, but it's a different kind of stress. You're not fighting for your life. You're not worried about dying. You're not worried about surviving. So in a defensive situation, you need more. A 22 is fine, but I would recommend more than a single shot for sure.
We've got just a few seconds before the break, and I know we've got other callers backed up. I would just ask them to be patient because we have another half hour of discussion coming up, and there'll be plenty of opportunity to chat with us. We're at 44 right now, and we're coming up on 9:30. Todd Eccles is joining us from Patriot Defense, and Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Before the break, one more time for people who'd like to get in touch with you if they'd like to sign up for the March 3rd Enhanced Carry Permit class.
Yeah, call or text me, area code 620-794-6223. That's area code 620-794-6223. Find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense. Message me there.
And, of course, if you're taking your flare gun to California and they say you can't have it, I guess you could always flush it down a toilet just like they do with the hamsters.
Fire it up in the air. We will come and rescue you.
Yeah, at the state line.
Yeah.
We've got more on the way in just a few minutes. Our telephone number, if you'd like to reach us during this half hour, we're talking about firearms, is 208-736-0300, 208-736-0300. Phones are a little more active this week than last.
I like it.
And Todd Eccles is in studio with us from Patriot Defense. Bill Colley on Top Story as well on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 45 and coming up on 34 minutes after 9 o'clock. Hey, quickly, there was a fellow who was, and I think you tipped me off to this, a doctor who was hit by a ricochet. Was it last weekend?
Yeah, I believe it was last weekend, last Saturday or
Devil's
Sunday.
Corral?
Yeah.
Again, we talk about safety. Here you go.
Yeah, he took it right in the chest, and it didn't pierce his skin. He said it hurt, obviously. So we just, I don't know. I haven't got into that whole mess out there, but they definitely need to figure out between the people who are out there riding their mules or horses, people out there driving around off road, and then the shooting. They definitely need to, and I think they're trying to work on figure something out. I mean, we got to come up with a shooting area, and then other recreation type of area, and I think that's what they're doing out there. And
Yeah, the
correct me if I'm
commissioners-
wrong, but
I think they told us that when we were at McDonald's last year in Jerome.
and it's just people go out there and they shoot, and there's spots you can shoot, but then they're shooting against rocks. I mean, you got people that are long range shooting, and I don't necessarily I don't want to blame the people shooting. I don't want to blame the people out there recreating on horses and motorbikes and stuff like that. It's just too much stuff. They just need to separate it all and get it all laid out a little bit better.
We have a caller. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning, Todd. You know, some people say you're fear-mongering. Well, I like it. I don't think you're fear-mongering. I think you're preparing us. I don't think it's any different than somebody selling freeze-dried food just in case you run out. But in your class, one of the things that struck me the most was that 21-foot rule video.
Yes.
Where the guy had an El Marco pen in his hand, the other guy had a gun with blanks in it, and he was supposed to assess the deal. The guy from 21 foot come over, got him, and marked him up before he could pull his gun. And when he moved away, he had a mark across his throat, his inner thigh, and his armpit, all the major vital points before he could even pull his gun. So if you don't think that's a threat, that you're sadly mistaken. And I think more guns save more people than we know, because I don't think half the time that a gun saves a family or a person that ever gets reported.
You know, I'll add to that, too. One shot might scare someone away,
Right.
even if you don't hit them. On the other hand, though, if they're high on some drug, it may not scare them at all.
You're right. I do want to say this, though. You know, one shot may scare them away, but never fire a warning shot. If you're going to have to pull, I just want to make that clear. We're not saying fire a warning shot. If you have to draw your gun and you have to fire it, aim for center mass always. I do want to say, you know, you don't ever want to have to use your gun. You want to avoid it if you can, but it's there if you need it. That's why we carry them. And like my story, I drew my firearm, and I didn't have to pull a trigger. I drew it, and that was enough to make those people get back in their vehicle and leave. So that might be all it takes sometimes.
And I want to thank you for the call. Football players can travel 100 yards, many of them, the faster ones, in just 9 seconds and a fraction of a second. Speaking of which, a guy by the name of Gronkowski, who's a little slower, but he's a tight end with the Patriots, got home from the Super Bowl the other day, and 911 got a telephone call.
111 line's recorded. Where is your emergency?
Hello, this is an emergency. This is Rob Gronkowski calling, and while I was gone, my whole house got robbed while on the Super Bowl trip.
3 firearms missing when he got home.
Wow.
So apparently he didn't have a safe, right?
Probably no safe if they're just laying around. Hopefully he wrote the serial numbers down. That's something that I know Forrest always talks about, and I want to mention too. And I'm not always great at this. Your firearms at home, even if you keep them in a safe, write the serial numbers down. Write what the serial numbers belong to, make, type, what was on the gun. For insurance reasons, for law enforcement, make 2 copies. Make 3 copies. Keep one at home. Keep one in your safe. Keep one hidden somewhere else in your house. Keep one at a friend's house, somewhere. So if your house gets burned down or something like that, you have a list you can give to the insurance. So if your house gets broken into, you have a list you can give to law enforcement so they can help recognize them if they show up at different stores or they find them in other crimes.
We got about a minute before the break, but we'll get a caller in here, and then we can talk about the call after the break. You're up next. You're on KLIX.
Thank you. I'm receiving emails from the National Organization for Gun Rights, and Dudley Brown is saying that if we get a constitutional convention, men like George Soros and Michael Bloomberg will destroy the Second Amendment. I want those gentlemen in your studio to comment on how that can take place and how we should avoid a constitutional convention. Thank you.
Got about 20 seconds.
You know, that's going toward the political side of it. It is important. That is the Second Amendment. We obviously don't want to give up any of our rights. We need to pay attention to what's going on, because a lot of times the decisions we can make now will play and affect us later, and we can catch us after the break.
And I was going to say, then don't have a convention.
There you go. I like it.
We've got more coming up. It's 20 minutes from 10 o'clock and 45. Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense in studio with us. Bill Colley as well on Top Story this morning. Todd Eccles in studio with us from Patriot Defense this morning on Top Story. News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. For people who'd like to get in touch with you about taking a class.
Yeah, you can call me. You can text me, area code 620-794-6223. That's area code 620-794-6223. My next class, I've got plenty of room in it. My next class is actually going to be on March 3rd. If you want private instruction, get a hold of me. I just talked to some other people last night, so this is becoming a new thing. People are wanting to take more classes. That's fantastic. Call me. We can set up a time after work, during the weekday, after work on the weekdays, on the weekends, whatever. We'll figure out something that works for you. Find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense, and look for my Patriot Defense podcast on iTunes and Spotify.
We had a caller who referenced the Second Amendment and threats to it we could have with a constitutional convention, and I just wanted to add, it's not always just what could happen in the United States. This comes from the Daily Signal. Headline, Beware, the United Nations is taking aim at ammo. And it says the first headline event for the UN in 2018 is in June, a review conference of the Program of Action to Prevent, Combat, and Eradicate the Illicit Trade in Small Arms and Light Weapons in all its aspects. And then it says it's commonly known as the POA. Then in August will come the annual conference of states parties to the Arms Trade Treaty, the 2013 Arms Trade Treaty, which nominally requires nations to impose new controls on international shipments of arms. But he breaks this down and says eventually they're going to try, one of the priorities that they have is to have ammunition included in this. So it could definitely have. Now, I know friends of mine who, they're not too worried because some of them have filled their basements with cases and cases and cases of ammunition.
It's not me at all.
But, the thing is, whenever somebody in one of those situations and the media gets a hold of it, oh, they had, 50,000 rounds, as if that's something bad. It might just be people thinking, the day may come when I may not be able to buy more of this. So it's like when I go to Costco. I don't necessarily need to buy the giant bales of paper towels and toilet paper, but I want some around for that day if it's a big snowfall and I can't get out, and I'm going to need it.
I stay prepared. Buy what you want to buy. If you're preparing with toilet paper, some people can food, some people buy ammo as well. And I always want to shoot. Now's the time to buy stuff like that when the prices are good. You never know what's going to happen. You never know if something like this is going to happen that's going to cause the price to go up and people to run out and buy everything they have, and then you won't be able to have anything. So buy it right now while the prices is good. Buy the prices are good. Buy firearms right now while the prices are good. Now's the time to do it. I will jump in here and add, my phone's been vibrating like crazy, and actually it's pretty cool because we've gotten lots of callers here today for the show, and I've got people who are actually texting me information on stuff we're talking about. For example, we're going to back up. Someone mentioned about the military taking the SIG. It was a 9mm that they went to, so everything we said was relevant. And someone also touched on the football player whose house got robbed. They actually stole the safe with the firearms inside.
Wow.
So I don't know how big a safe it was. If you have a big safe, they either had a lot of time or it was a small safe and they're able to get it out. Try bolting your safe to the floor. If you have an area where you can do that, concrete floor, they're made to bolt to the floor, bolt to the walls. Do whatever you can, make those as safe as possible.
I used to broadcast about once a year from a safe sale back in the southern part of the country that's called Southern States. In the Northeast, it's called Agway, and here we have D&B Supply. They're all basically the same style stores. But I would do live broadcasts once a year from the safe sale. And some of these things weigh 3,000 pounds. I wouldn't be too worried about bolting that down. Don't put it in your garage, though, because even at 3,000 pounds, someone could come along and figure out a way to loft it into the back of a heavy-duty pickup bed and carry it away.
Yeah, I'm just that immediately came to mind because I know people who have their safes in their garage and they're not bolted down. And I told them, I was like, man, this is have it in your house and don't bolt it down. All they got to do is back in, shut the garage door down, figure out how to get it into the truck, and then just open the door and leave.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just be careful where you put your safe. I also read somewhere, whether or not this is true or not, I was also read if you're going to have it inside your house, put it on an outside wall. Because the fire, if your house burns down and catches on fire, the fire burns hottest in the center of the house. So put it on the outside wall. Even if you have a fire-rated safe, it's less likely bad things happening on the outside walls.
I'm glad, though, that Gronkowski actually had a safe in his house because he's from Western New York. He grew up in a town not far from where I grew up, and at least he's not 2 beers short of a six-pack.
Responsible gun ownership. I like it. And I also do want to thank the listeners for even texting me. The calls in were great today. The text messages, fantastic. It's all like live feed. It's like real. I love it. It's great.
We have another caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on Top Story. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm calling in response to the lady who said she would shoot antelope and deer with a .22 rimfire. Well, you better not do that in Idaho. It's against the regulations. I'm reading from the regulations right now. With any weapon restrictions, rifle and shotgun, with any rimfire rifle, rimfire handgun, or muzzle-loading handgun, except for mountain lions or legally trapped gray wolves. And there's others that are in the restrictions, but that's just specifically towards the .22 rimfire.
Right, and in Idaho, you're correct. Those are the regulations for Idaho. Now, this was somewhere else. I don't know where her ranch was at. Did she say, Bill?
No.
But, I have a feeling this was years ago, so, maybe the regulations were a little bit different back there. It can be done, but right now, as of in Idaho, that is not legal. It's not something we recommend. We always recommend that you follow the letter of the law, especially when it comes to, taking wild game. You want to use the proper calibers and stuff. Don't get yourself jammed up by fishing game.
I will say this. I want to thank people for doing some research.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's pretty cool. You're up next. You're on the air on Top Story on KLIX with Todd Eccles and Bill Colley.
Yes. Regarding safes, they're good. They keep an honest person honest. I can open any safe sold in Twin Falls in 10 minutes. And not hurt the firearms attendant. But I am a metal worker, and I've worked metal for 45 years, and it's not a problem. Regarding 22s, I lived in Alaska, but this was before my time. A man would go out and shoot grizzlies in Alaska with a high standard 22, and he lived to tell about it and shot numerous ones. So don't ever underestimate the 22.
No, 22s, don't ever, especially if you 22 long rifle or even 22 mag. Don't ever they can take a life. So you got to be responsible with them like you do all firearms. And I know there's people that come to my class, and some of them are older people, and they can't always shoot a bigger caliber. They can't make the firearm function. It jams up a lot, or they just aren't strong enough to wield it. And so they're shooting a 22, caliber handgun, and there's nothing wrong with that. My thoughts are always shoot the largest caliber. Carry and shoot the largest caliber that you can go out and shoot comfortably and well.
Right. And, of course, I just read this morning where in Montana they're talking about delaying, even though the federal government says you can hunt the grizzlies. Montana's saying they may delay that. But I always love the story that Kelton Hatch told me one time about grizzly bears. He said, just keep in mind the grizz is the one animal that will hunt you back.
Exactly.
So I might use something a little larger myself.
But this gentleman was talking about back when men were men.
Right, that's true. Yeah. Some of these outdoorsmen, and I'm sure were better crack shots than I was. Caller, you're next. You're on the air on Top Story. It's about 10 minutes from 10 o'clock. Go ahead.
Yeah, Todd, love the show. I'm going to hang up here in a second. What's your thought on the 6.5 Creedmoor? I'll take your answer off there. Thanks.
6.5 Creedmoor. I'm more of a handgun guy than I am a rifle guy. But if I were to go out and buy a rifle right now, like I said, I don't have any excitement to go buy a rifle. But if I were to buy one, I would buy the 6.5 Creedmoor. I think it's going to be good for taking anything that you want to take with it. Deer, elk. It's great from what I hear. It's a great long-range caliber, especially if you're going to load for it. I hear stories of guys taking it out long distances and plunking steel with it. I got no problems with the 6.5 Creedmoor. Now, if you want and you need more questions answered, I'm sure you can go down to Washington Street Pawn, talk to Forrest. He's our resident rifle guy. He is not here today. He could probably delve into a lot more ballistics and a lot more information and probably help you get your hands on one if you want to take a look at one. So I go down to Washington Street Pawn and talk to Forrest. He could help you out.
The problem is every time if I were to go in and look at something and get my hands on it, then I know I'm going to leave with it.
I drive around every day. I just told you when I pulled in, when I came into the studio today, that I found an old car that I want to buy, and that'd be, I got to figure out how to sneak it home. So yeah. I find stuff I want to buy every day, whether or not I go into stores.
And the wife says, "What's under that tarp?" "Oh, nothing."
Yeah, I'm parking out there next to the other 6 other old rusty vehicles I got.
I just saw this over the weekend, this past weekend, and it came from East Idaho News. And the headline was, "Newsmakers, Pistol in the Pulpit Pastor Tim Rupp." Tim Rupp served in the military police and then 24 years in the San Antonio Police Department, and then went into the ministry, and his church sent him to Eastern Idaho. And he's been here ever since. He is now working to teach safety in churches so we can avoid tragedies like the one that happened several months ago in Texas.
That's a good idea. I think everyone should look at carrying a firearm even when they go to church. People think they go there and they think that I'm going to a sanctuary, I'm going to go worship, I'm going to go whatever, this is going to be safe. Well, as you can see by recent events and past recent events and even further events than that, they're not always safe. They can actually be a weak spot. They're a soft target. You're going to go in there. People aren't expecting it. People can go in. They can walk down the aisles and just pick people off. That's what happened in the last church shooting. I just talked to a gentleman, a friend of mine. Actually, he's going to take my class from me, and he's a big fan. He's listener number 3 for my podcast. He actually lived in Texas, and that church was 10 miles from where he went to church at. And he said that he went to church after that, and he was carrying a firearm. And he was looking around, and he realized that he was probably the only one that had a firearm. And so that really kind of drove it home to him. It can happen in the safest places and the least likely places that you think it'll happen. It's good to be prepared. And if you're going to go carry a firearm anywhere, church, in public, anywhere, Walmart, it doesn't matter. Do it safely, do it properly, learn some of the safe skills, go take a class, get trained up. I can help you. There's plenty of other people that can help you. We can work on marksmanship, how to draw and fire, safe ways to do it. We talk about holsters, talk about you name it. We can cover. And if I can't, I will find someone that can.
We have a caller. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on Top Story. Go ahead.
Hey, Bill, just going to share a real life story. You know how quick something can happen. A couple years ago, my high school senior, a son, called me about midnight. He was on his way home, and a vehicle started chasing him. Chased him right to our house. We live a couple miles up a dirt lane. He called in a panic and didn't know what was happening. I just picked up a rifle and stepped out on the doorstep. This car chased him right to our doorstep, cut across the lawn, took off, wrecked, leaving our house. When the range deputy got there, this guy was hung out on meth and was looking for a way to commit suicide. So fortunately, nothing bad happened to us, but it can happen very quickly.
Well, I had a similar situation. I think I mentioned it on air before. My senior year of high school, I graduated, and that summer, the following Monday, we started building a new house. We had a piece of land. It had been a horse pasture, and we had a pig farm there, and my dad decided he was going to build a house there. It was going to be the last place he lived, and we were building the house, and we had an old mobile home. That's what they called them at the time. Now they call them manufactured homes. A trailer.
Right.
We had it that was parked there. And so my job during the summer, I had a second job too, but Dad told me, he said, stay there and you can keep an eye on the place at night because we had a lot of lumber piled up, a lot of tools piled up. And I would sleep on the couch instead of one of the bedrooms because in the couch I was closer to the front. You could hear maybe more activity. And I heard some sounds, and we were worried somebody was going to be stealing lumber, and apparently that's what was going on, or somebody shopping for tools, discount shopping.
Sure.
And I grabbed a .22 off the wall, and I swung open. We had a porch, stepped out on the porch, and I stood there, and I was in my skivvies with the light on so they could see me. And I said, hey, get the H out of here. And whoever it was took off. I could hear them running down a creek bed. I could hear the rocks beneath their feet as they were running away. So probably I shouldn't have done it quite so boldly because they could see me. I couldn't see them. That was the only other issue with that.
Right. But, hey, you were there. You guys knew something might happen, and you were prepared. That was the thing. You were prepared.
Right.
This gentleman was prepared. This gentleman who called in, his son had, had enough sense to call his dad and say, this is what's going on. What do you want me to do? I'm headed home. I'm coming down the lane. And they were able to curtail it off at the end. They were able to, no one had to shoot a gun. No one got hurt. The law enforcement showed up, the range deputy, whatever. If it was a range deputy, it's probably kind of far out from what it sounds like. And you never know when it's going to happen. It could be driving home. It could be you're taking your daughter, your kids fishing. It could be, I've had 2 or 3 situations. I didn't think it was going to happen. I couldn't have pinpointed or pointed my finger and said, it's going to happen today. I don't know. I was always prepared. That's the way you need to be, prepared and trained and ready.
Got to wrap things up, and I just wanted to mention before we do, I've been passing along some details about Idaho's most popular solar installer, that is Even Green Technology, or EGT Solar. And they wanted to mention, because it is tax season, this might be fresh in your mind, but you can get a tax credit that would save you 30% off your total investment when it comes to having solar power in your home. You can check them out by calling a number 208-293-911 or 9191, 208-293-9191, or go to evengreentechnology.com, and there are reviews from some of the customers there that you can check out as well. And I always like to say, we talk a lot about self-defense and also survival on this program. Having a solar array, even if it's just a backup, might be part of that plan. Very quickly, Todd, we got about 30 seconds before we wrap up.
Yeah, I got my next class is March 3rd. Call me, text me if you're interested or have questions. Area code 620-794-6223. That's area code 620-794-6223. Find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense. Check out my podcast. Subscribe. Patriot Defense Podcast. I'm on iTunes and Spotify, and Bill vouched for it.
I will. In fact, I've taken your class. I've also listened to the podcast.
Yeah, fantastic. I appreciate that, Bill.
And again, the podcasts are also posted at places like Facebook.
Yes.
Easy to listen to if you check out Todd's Facebook page. God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll allow me to come back here next Monday morning between 8 and 10 o'clock. We should see Todd in about 1 week. In the meantime, the Rush Limbaugh program is on the way just after the news at 10 o'clock from the Fox Radio Network.